Okay, now we move on to the Fe signals, starting with Fe1, which is on-beat emphasis. So on-beat emphasis is a gesticulation sign, and it basically means this, okay? It's like you give the beat is on the right note. So when you're talking, there's again, there was a warm swelling with that, but when you're talking, you give the presentation and your beats land, your hands beats, your faces beats, your body's beats. So it's not just the hand, it's the head. You see this together, right? It can also be the torso. The body coordinates itself. So especially if we're talking about Fe in an Fe lead, the whole body kind of collaborates in this beat, right? Things are hitting at the right note. And I'll have to differentiate this from TE when I get to TE in the next video. Fe2 is emotional shepherding. This is a psychological cue, which means it takes an examination of language. In this case, emotional shepherding comes in the form of putting social transactions in motion or negating those transactions. And that's a way of shepherding the emotional dynamic. You see Vladimir Putin do this when he says, I'm going to tell you just how I'm going to solve this, and I think you're going to like my answer. Or it can be, okay, everybody gather around, okay, hold hands, and okay, let's, okay, we're gonna start praying. You're about to find out 10 ways to transform your life. Or it could have some overlap with the semantic disclaimers, which I'll get to later, and it can be like, now I don't want you to think that I went out and did this without doing my research. I did my research, but even when I did my research, I still found that X, Y, and Z was still true. And what this is making sure the dynamic goes the way you want it to. So it's like you notice where it could go off course, and you have a sense of the course you want it to go. So then you put in verbs into motion so that the presentation goes the way you want it. Okay, now we go on to Fe3, which is warm swelling. What you see is that when Fe gesticulates, there's a delay before the hit. Again, it hits on the beat, but even before it hits on the beat, there's a swell then a hit. There's a swell then a hit. So there's a So there's a and that swell is actually an emotive, embedded emotion. So there's a deliberate embedding of emotion in the presentation, just as I'm doing right now, to make sure that you get what I'm communicating. And it moves, again, emotional shepherding, you in the right direction of the understanding as I want you to understand it. So this delay and the hit is part of how Fe communicates. And the warm swelling is the swell part of it. The on-beat emphasis is the hit. You could have one without the other. And sometimes you do see some TE users, they have a little bit of a swell, but they won't have the hit. The hit will be different, which I'll get to TE later. Fe4 is zygomatic smile. The zygomatic muscles, there's a major and a minor muscles, and they're both kind of going in this diagonal direction here. So again, as I noted, Fi users use kind of this H shape where the muscles that go up towards the nose and down right here are the ones that are most activated, even constantly. And so what this does is it creates this H look to the face, whereas with Fe, the muscles that are most activated are the ones going this way diagonally, and these are the zygomatic muscles. So the smiles look more like this. So these are the kind of Fe smiles, whereas Fi smiles are like that, roughly speaking. There's more nuance to it, but roughly speaking, smiles of Fe and smiles of Fi. Fe5, like I said, semantic disclaimers. So preventative measures. Basically, it's understanding how something will be taken before it's actually put out there. So basically, Fe calculates as a causality function how a chess move will play out in the environment, and it might say that it's not a good chess move. If you say that, that's going to happen. But a way to get around it is to say, well, if you qualify it, then you can make your chest move without the damage. And these qualifiers are sometimes very, very needed. The opposite with TE, again, we're just speaking as TE as a function. TE may forget to qualify. So that's why it can be blunt. And it can just say what it means, how it means it, in a very honest way, without subtracting from it what may not jive with the environment towards whatever outcome they want to have in the environment. FE6 is warm head shakes, and this is shared as a JE signal with TE and FE, but with FE, warm head shakes are just, you can still see the warm swelling in the head shake. So whereas I'll get to the head shakes of TE later. FE7 is warm head nods. This is like this. The head nod again, usually also with the hands. But in general, what you see is more of a delay and a hit. You see this a lot in conductor types where they use the head instead of the hands. You can use the hands as gesticulation, but they almost do all the work with the head sometimes, where the head gives the impression, the confidence, it gives the authority. With these little head nods, they're just where they hit just right, and they're not snippy or sassy. They're just meant to do this. FE8 is upset tension, and this is kind of a hard signal to quantify, but it's the quality of this whole area. It's basically the jawbone area. As FE is in a state of moral disapproval or frustration. With FI, moral disapproval or frustration manifest more as disgust. Like disgust, like, or the excessive contempt, right? For FE, moral disapproval manifests in, there's this disapproving. So what happens is there's almost like I'm exaggerating here, but that's part of it. You see Obama do this too. But here, there will be a toning here. And there's usually a composure of just kind of standing back and just being like you idiot. And the unstated message is that you messed up. And they're letting you know that non-verbally, just by how they're holding their face. It's a moral condemnation going out to you. It's not repulsion and disgust. It's just, okay, look at this. That's it right there. FE9 is adaptive emulation. Now this is the opposite. This is an adaptive signal. So this will manifest as agreeableness, which is like, yeah, cool, sure, let's go. But oh, yeah, no, I'm glad you left that guy, man. Oh, yeah, he was not good for you. Oh, your friends in town? Great. Say hi to them for me. Oh yeah, sure, I can do that. Oh, thank you. These things, these signals of agreeableness are different in FI and FE, but in FE, they have that quality to them. FE10 is directive pushing, which is the opposite. If adaptive emulation is the adaptive side, and directive pushing is the directive side, and so you have, instead of conforming to a dynamic somebody else puts in place, you initiate the dynamic. Again, FE is transactional, so there's constantly an economy going on where things are happening and you're responding to them, but sometimes someone puts a play in action, and sometimes you have to respond to the play that's in action. In the case of directed pushing, there's an initiation. So it can be as simple as we need to do something about climate change right now. We are already decades too late. That's an example of directed pushing. Or as Tom Cruise famously said in his video, put your manners back in. All right, and that completes the Fe signals.